Hey, Veach, can you hear us okay?
Hey, I can.
Awesome. We are ready when you are.
All right. Well, certainly exciting to say that we are officially 1 week away from the opener, and uh, look forward to seeing that crowd and that excitement. And we'll certainly have some fun watching that banner drop. But I think the most exciting part of the night will be the opportunity to play one of the best teams in the National Football League, in the Baltimore Ravens. Have a ton of respect for Eric DeCosta and the job he does, and Coach Harbaugh. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Certainly looking forward to it. With that being said, I want to thank my coaching staff and personnel staff for the last few days getting this 53-man roster set. For the most part, I anticipate this would be the roster going into week one, but as you guys know, we'll always continue to monitor the waiver wire, and if we can get a little better, we'll do that. I think we had a good, productive offseason with the guys. We were able to retain a couple free agency players, and then a draft class and an undrafted free agency class that had 8 guys make the team, really 9 if you count Matt Ariza. And then in just the last few days, adding Juju, Samaje, Cam Thomas, and Eric Scott. So again, thanks to my staff for all their hard work, and the coaching staff for their help in this process. And with that, I'll take your questions.
All right, we'll go first to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett, how you doing today?
Good, Adam. How are you?
Good. Hey, I had a couple questions about Kadarius. He was productive player for you that first year. Maybe you don't win the Super Bowl without him, but why do you feel like it didn't work out for him in the long term here? And Kelsey, I'll have a second question as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're certainly disappointed. I think he's disappointed. I mean, we really like the kid, and I know that people could have different takes on Kadarius, and but I know in this building, he's a bright kid, he's a smart kid. I mean, I think when you look back on it, some of the stuff is a stroke of bad luck in regards to some of the injuries you can't control, like walking out the first day of training camp last year and tearing his MCL. I mean, that was something that was just unfortunate. And some of the things I think that we talked about was sometimes you can make some bad luck turn into good luck by just doing some little things in the offseason, take care of your body. And I think that's a process he's working through. And again, it's certainly not for lack of talent. And that's a situation where I think when you move on from players like that, I think everyone feels disappointed. But as far as our relationship with the kid, I really like the kid, and I don't think that he's certainly we've seen the end of him, and I think he'll have a chance. And I think if he's able to tighten up some of the offseason stuff and get his body right, I think he'll go out there and make a ton of plays for another team.
Okay, and just curious how you view that trade? You got some good production out of him that first year. Maybe you don't win that Super Bowl without him, but you didn't get the long-term production. So how do you kind of view that trade that you made with the Giants?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think we're sitting here going for a third straight Super Bowl had we not made that trade. So from that standpoint, do it all over again in a heartbeat. I think it's always disappointing when a player's tenure comes to an end in that situation, meaning you'll have players that the age catches up to them. You'll have players where maybe it's obviously a really serious injury, and then you'll have players that you move on from where the talent just wasn't there. So I think when you have to move on from a player and the full product or the finished product or untapping all that talent wasn't realized, there's a disappointment. And I think it goes both ways. I'm certainly sure that there would be things that he would do different in regards to just some of the off-season stuff and taking care of the body. But again, I think it's a process. He's a really smart kid, and I do think he'll figure it out. And again, I think he'll end up making plays for a team down the road here. But as far as our interaction and working with the kid, he was actually a lot of fun to be around, and just hope for the kid that he can get a little good luck on his side and stay healthy.
Is Perine done, and how do you see him fitting in if he is?
So that was a big role. I think when we finished our off season and we went into training camp, one of the positions where we were concerned, and this may hit another question, Adam, but I'll hit the Perine question, but was certainly D end. I think if you look since I've been here, we've always carried 5 DNs, and game day it might be 4. Some games it's 5, but I think on the active roster we've always carried 5 DNs. And then with obviously BJ's situation and then Omenahu's injury, we were on the lookout to add a fifth defensive end. And in addition to that third down Jerick McKinnon role, we obviously have some guys that can run and catch, but the proficiency in pass pro, I think one of the things that Samaje brings to the table is he's been one of the best in the NFL the last few years on third down in regards to targets and pass protections. And he's just a veteran player that fills that role. And, we're certainly excited to bring him in and get him up and running. And hopefully he's up to speed quickly enough to be active on Thursday night.
We'll go next to Sam McDowell. Sam?
Hey, Brett. You touched on this with the additions, but just wondering what you thought of the depth coming out of camp and the way you feel you've addressed it and just since cutdown day. And Kelsey, I'll have a follow-up too.
Well, I think we were able to address some glaring needs, and again, the 5th defensive end and the third down running back position. I think it's similar when you get to this point of the season with every GM. I think there's always something else you can do. So I think getting through OTAs and getting through training camp, working with the coaching staff and the personnel staff, I think we feel good, but I think there's always room for improvement. And I think we have some unproven pieces at the corner position, but I do think we have some talent there, and some guys have played in the past. So again, I think there's always room to get better, and I think we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't continually combing through the waiver wire and the transactions.
And now that you're just a week out from the regular season, what's the early year hope for Hollywood Brown?
Well, I would, I don't like talking about medical, because if I say something and he's ahead of that timeline or behind that timeline, then, I don't want to put any more pressure on the kid. I would say that, and I'm sure it's been reported, I mean, I could probably confidently say it was similar to Tyreek. And I think given that timeline, I think it falls in line with the timeline that Tyreek went through. But I know he's here every day, and he's to the point now where he can laugh without pain. So that's a good thing. So he's certainly trending in the right direction. And look, there was a reason why we didn't put him on the IR to start the season. So I think within that window, I defer to Rick, but I feel like he's probably on that trajectory Tyreek was on.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
We'll go next to Pete Sweeney.
Hey, Brett, I was wondering about the back end of the wide receiver room. I think we all knew the top 4 coming into camp. You guys end up with Moore, Hardman, and Juju. Just the thought that put them over the edge.
So a lot of it has to do with special teams. I think with Juju, once we got out of the Jacksonville game, Hollywood got hurt and had some conversations with Juju's agent. And as we were kind of going through our roster, I think some of the other guys, Remigio had a good camp, Justyn Ross had a good camp, Montreal Washington had a good camp. But some of the things, Pete, how coach works with just like components, and certainly you'll have Hollywood and Worthy, and now with Hollywood being out, you have McCole. Some of the things that Travis does, Noah Gray does really well. And then with Rasheed, he did fill in that Juju role, and there's some of the intermediate stuff that he does well with Travis that we thought Juju did better than the other players. And so he's a bigger player than some of those smaller guys. And then with some of the intermediate route running, I think he had maybe a little bit better feel, and Justin's working on that. We all know Justyn can make plays outside the numbers and use his size. And I think as he continues to develop, that will be something that he'll need to work on. And I think we feel confident he will. But I just think that Juju's experience in this offense and that feel for that position gives us the ability to kind of sub these guys out, give them blows, and hopefully still match that kind of production.
We'll go to Jesse Newell next.
Hey, Brett. Sorry about that. Trying to get mute. And because you have a quick follow-up. With Rees-Zammit, I wanted to ask you about him. Did you guys want him back on your practice squad, or did you encourage him to pursue other opportunities out there?
We kept it open. We wanted the kid to really, look at maybe some different opportunities as well. Pretty remarkable when you think about a player that doesn't have any pro American football experience, no middle school, no high school, no big time college experience. And we were kind of thinking about it going through camp. Imagine not having any sort of foundational background, just to be thrown in and be doing one-on-one pass pros with a Drew Tranquil or a Nick Bolton. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I think for him, it'll be just finding out that exact position, running back, maybe a big slot receiver. I think he does have some potential as a returner. I'm not so sure he couldn't be a kicker. I mean, he had an outstanding leg, and with this new role, he can do some different things, provide some versatility. I think the Jacksonville thing and their relationship overseas and what that brings to the table, going overseas twice a year, I think that was probably something that interests him. But phenomenal kid, phenomenal worker. And again, just thinking back on the tremendous amount of progress he made in a short amount of time, I think he'll continue to grow and develop. And I think he found a really good spot there in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and real quick, you had talked early in the offseason about approaching Harrison and Creed first. Just specifically with Trey, do you have conversations with him? Obviously, you have a budget you have to fit under, but do you have conversations with him about an extension?
Yeah, we've been like I said, we've been in conversations with Trey, and we still have some time here, and we'll get a chance to talk to both Trey's people and Nick's people, and it is a little tricky when you get in the offseason. It's hard to kind of work on 4 deals all at the same time, not knowing where they're going to end and not knowing where the money is going to be allocated. So you do unfortunately have to do it kind of systematically, and it does take time and does drag out. Fortunately, we were able to knock Harrison out rather quickly, and obviously Creed was tricky. That took some time. He's a tremendous player, but excited to get him done. And now we still have some time here before the season starts, and we'll continue to see if we can make some progress with the last few guys there that are younger guys that are going to be up next year.
Thanks, Jesse. We'll go next to Matt Derrick.
Hey, Brett. You
Matt.
mentioned the 8-9 rookies that you've gotten. By my count, I think you've got 16 total newcomers on this team who weren't on the roster last year. 11 offense, 4 defense. You're always going to have turnover in a team, but that disparity, why is it the turnover good on the offense for you and the sameness, if you will, this good on the defensive side? And Kelsey, I'll have a follow-up.
Well, I think just the combination of just contractually from the rookie contracts and just adding depth. And I think one of the strengths that we have on our staff is how our coaches develop players. And I think we're looking at our roster and you see Kingsley and Norzad and Hansen and Driscoll, and I mean you're taking 4 rookies with no NFL experience into a season, but I think just the progression that they've made from the first day they've been here through training camp. Can't speak enough about Coach Heck and the job he does. We've seen it over the years with Spags and Coach Merritt, but I mean, really all of our coaches, we take a lot of, we have a lot of confidence, I should say, in our coaching staff. And I think there's that value that as we progress here and, you're paying your quarterback, obviously rightfully so, but the quarterback, the tight end, the DN, the center, everything's at the top of the market. I mean, it's just the reality of this business, and you got to draft and you got to develop young talent. And, so it's that mix of taking care of your veteran players that have earned it and continuing to draft and develop talent. And so it's almost a necessity that we have to do it. But again, I think, we put a lot of emphasis on the type of players we bring in here. A lot of these guys are super smart, super versatile, and have room to grow.
And specifically, and you kind of mentioned with the offensive line, all of your backup offensive linemen have 3 years less experience. Obviously, a little bit of the byproduct of the contracts, but what do you see in that group as far as, being able to produce both, this year and long term from those young guys?
Well, I think, and we talk about this every year. I think the versatility stands out. Hunter Norzad's a guy that obviously maybe best suited to play center, but I think he gives you guard flex. I think Hansen needs some time, but I think, he's probably more suited to play center as well. I do think that he's got a lot of room to grow. He's super athletic. I think he just needs to get a little bit bigger and stronger, but I think he has guard center flex. And then Driscoll is just one of those type of players that has rare physical traits. He's a big guy. He's athletic. Again, like Hansen, there'll be some anchoring issues and there'll be some weight issues early on. But he was a guy that I think it was rough the first preseason game, and then it got a little bit better, and then it got a little bit better, and then you can see him grow and get more confidence at practice. And one of the hard parts of it is you see that there's certainly another team saying that, and then we bring a player in here, and we work with him, we develop him, we go through the rough patches, and then all of a sudden to have him break free on the waiver wire, someone's getting a young player under a rookie contract with a ton of work that we put into it. And so I think there's always that desire to see it through the end. And again, Coach Heck has done this with many players over the years.
We have 4 more for you, Veach. We'll go next to Nick Jacobs.
And Kelsey, I'll have a follow-up if I can, please. Brett, my first question for you, over the years, from the time you scout them until they get to year 3 or 4, what are kind of the toughest positions to develop these days?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's probably team dependent and scheme dependent. I think so. I can't speak for every team and where they view that question going. I know for us, the linebacker position has been tricky for us because that's another coach on the field. And so I think we've gone through some learning phases there, but Steve does a great job in communicating exactly what he wants. So we are very specific in regards to linebacker and safeties when it comes to free agencies and the draft. And there are a lot of players that maybe go high in the draft that potentially weren't even under consideration for us. So I think that question is more scheme specific. I know that there's a high threshold for those 2 positions. Certainly quarterback is a tough position. And then I think you can probably follow up that question, what positions are hard to find on the waiver wire. And to me, it's the cornerback position, because every team is looking for, I don't know how many teams sit there and say that they're 3 or 4 deep. And in regards to just Pro Bowl type players, it's a hard position to play. The receivers are so talented. You're out there on an island a ton of the time. And I think over the years, the one position that is extremely difficult to find on the waiver wire is corner. And that's why I think you have to be a little bit proactive with trades and having communications with teams. And I think over the years, we've done a pretty good job of identifying guys and putting claims in for the right guys. But you do have to continue to take chances with that turnover at that position.
And kind of speaking of those trades with Hendershot and with Thomas, and then also you acquiring Scott, what did you see in each of those guys? You're like, we need that on our roster.
Right. Well, I think when you get to the final touches of a 53-man roster, I think you're looking for special teams, and whether that be, and prior to signing Samaje, we were still looking for running back, tight end, special teams help. And I think Hendershot's a guy that's played a ton of special teams reps there. So if you don't get it all the time from that running back position, you have to get it from somewhere else. And we have a good linebacking core. It'd be good to do more at that tight end position. It'd also be good to take Noah off some of those things. I think Noah continues to get better, and he's a guy that I think we want to feature a little bit more this year. So knowing that, it's good to have the ability to take him off some of those special teams. I had mentioned earlier in the press conference that I don't think we had a 5th defensive end. So that was something that we just needed from a depth standpoint. And I think Cam's a guy that we like coming out, and he's a high motor player. And, he has some George Karlaftis qualities with the way he plays and how he attacks things. And then, with Scott, we're just, again, that goes back to the waiver wire and just, always throwing some numbers at that. And again, fortunate that we have a great coaching staff that if they have it, we'll get it out of them. And when you have a guy that has traits, always willing to take a chance there.
We'll go next to Nate Taylor.
Hey, Brett.
Hey.
With everything that you've been able to do this offseason, now you've had, a full offseason, training camp, preseason. Just what have you learned most about Jaden Hicks, considering you guys selected him in the 4th round, but he seemed to be a guy that really obviously got better as sort of the weeks went along. Just what are your thoughts on Jaden Hicks and how he may be a contributor this season?
Yeah. He's done a great job. And, I think I think you guys seen it at practice early on at OTAs. It wasn't one of those guys that we drafted and he had some ups and downs and, then he started making plays. I think from the time he stepped on the field here, he had a good grasp of things. And then that kind of translated right into the training camp and right off the bat, Jacksonville game. I mean, he's the one player that stands out, and he's continued to grow and develop. And I think he's on track to have a special career here. And I think he's going to have a big role on this defense. It's funny, Nate, I was at home watching some preseason games after we got done playing one night. And I think I just randomly texted Tyrann Mathieu just to check in and say hi. And we were exchanging texts, and he kind of ended it with, and 21's a stud. So I think, it's not just apparent to us and to the media here that's been here and seen it, but even the league's taken notice of it. And a guy like Tyrann Mathieu, I mean, he sets a standard there. So when he's sitting there watching games and, we're not talking Chiefs, we're just exchanging texts about families and what have you. So when he mentions it, I think it's kind of taken the same way in by the rest of the league. So he's done a great job. And again, we're excited for him and where his future can go.
Last two here, we'll go next to Seren.
Brett, the defensive tackle, you've got only 4. I know you've got 3 on the practice squad, so you do have some depth down there. But is that just how the numbers worked out? Is that where the game is going? There's so much nickel, so much passing that the bigger guys, I know, because that seems like kind of a small number for what a rotation you'd like, especially when you consider that Chris kind of kicks outside sometimes. Do you feel like maybe you're a little thin there, or how'd that just come together the way it did?
Yeah, no, I listen, I think that the corner position and I think the defensive line position, I think it's one of those things where we're going to continue to look at and monitor. That was certainly that caused the urgency, I think, to get Cam again, just as a defensive end, but on the defensive line in particular, we did have some numbers that were close. We felt like we'd have a good chance to get some of these guys on the practice squad to use the elevations. And there's a little of us buying some time to get, Omenahu's going to be the big piece for us down the stretch. And so I think when we find a guy that we feel adds a little bit, maybe more upfield rush in that group, I think Turk Wharton's had a great camp. He's way ahead of where he was last year coming off that knee injury. So you have Chris, you have Turk Wharton, who had a great camp. I think we have an experienced player in Derek. That third position or that fourth position with Derek, Mike Pinnell, the end of the season he had last year in that Super Bowl he had last year, he continues to defy odds because he is an older guy, but he continues to bring juice to that room. So I think if you had a guy that you can supplement in there that had some upfield rush in that, might be a smaller guy, weren't able to find that in the waiver wire. We'll continue to do that, but we also know that as this goes on here, we're going to get Charles back, and he's kind of the last missing piece of that defensive line for us.
And I apologize if I missed this, but you mentioned signing Perine. I don't think we've seen a move yet. Is there?
He's in the building now. It's just a matter of us turning the papers in, but he's good to go, and I think he's already got the playbook and got the first few meetings in with the coaches here. So that'll be, I'm sure you'll see that on the transaction wire here soon. Yep.
Matt, you can close us out.
Hey, Brett. I know you're always working on the roster all year long, but in terms of the offseason roster construction process, for you and your staff, is there a sense of fulfillment? Thinking about where you were on the first day of free agency to now you have a roster that's ready to go out there and compete on week 1?
I don't know. I don't know if there's ever been an opening weekend where you go into the game and you feel like you're going to go out there and dominate. This league, it humbles you super quick. And there's been times throughout the last few seasons where we haven't looked like the best team in the NFL. Unfortunately for us, we have a strong culture, a great coaching staff, and we've been able to stay healthy at the end of the year and get on a hot streak. But it's so competitive, I think. And again, I can't speak for the rest of GMs, but I continually stare at the roster thinking, how can we get better and we're not good enough, and can we add something? So I think that I'm certainly proud of my personnel staff and the work they've done, and certainly appreciative of the coaches for all the input that they've added. And I think it's a never ending process. And, another aspect of this is just the attrition and the injuries. And we're going to have a lot, and we're going to have a lot of young guys that at a certain point, like you look at that offensive line, we're going to be playing a lot of young players with no experience here. So I think that there's a lot of talent and potential. But I also think that, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we weren't continually trying to make our roster better throughout the course of the season.
We appreciate you jumping on. We'll let you get back to it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.